Welcome back to the Military Situation Room, your source for detailed military updates from the front lines. I'm your host, and today we're covering the latest developments from Ukraine on December 22nd, 2025. Before we dive into today's critical report, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Our analytics show that nearly 50% of viewers aren't subscribed yet, and we don't want you to miss any of these crucial updates. If you find this analysis valuable, a thumbs up really helps us reach more people who need this information. Today's report is particularly significant. We're witnessing a dramatic shift in Russian military strategy as multiple fronts ignite simultaneously along the Ukrainian border. Let's get straight into it. We start in Zaporizhzhia Oblast, and what we've uncovered today reveals a dangerous new phase of this conflict. We've successfully geolocated drone footage showing a Russian UAV approaching a critical bridge along the M18 route near the settlement of Kharkiv. But here's what makes this significant. Underneath this bridge, Soviet-era TM-72 anti-tank mines had already been positioned by Ukrainian forces. These aren't random explosives. This is a deliberate defensive strategy. The Ukrainians have been preparing contingency plans if Russian forces break through settlements like Stepnohursk or Primorsk. These bridges become instant choke points that can be destroyed to halt any Russian advance across the river. Shortly after this drone reconnaissance, we witnessed a massive explosion. The bridge is now either destroyed or severely damaged. It's difficult to assess if vehicles can still cross, but the strategic impact is clear. This isn't an isolated incident. The Russians are systematically targeting Ukraine's river crossing infrastructure. We've identified multiple bridges in this sector, one east of Kharkiv, another through Ulivka settlement, a third near Kamyshyvatka, and here's what we don't know: how many pontoon bridges has Ukraine deployed? Are there frozen crossing points? The fog of war is thick here. Strategic assessment. By destroying this particular bridge, Russia appears to be choking supply lines to Primorsk and Novondriivka. They're isolating Ukrainian positions before launching ground assaults. Moving to recent geolocated footage that confirms Russian ground forces have seized warehouses in the western part of Lukyanivka. This puts them directly against a fortified Ukrainian defensive line running through the settlement. Here's the puzzle. Ukrainian sources report minimal Russian armored vehicles, tanks, and artillery systems in this sector. Yet attacks continue with intensity. This suggests either intelligence gaps on our side. Russia is achieving tactical success with limited mechanized forces. They're relying heavily on infantry and drone warfare. The main targets remain Stepnohursk and Primorsk, but now Lukyanivka has fallen into the battle space. We've also geolocated the destruction of a Ukrainian ammunition depot between Lukyanivka and Pavlivka. The explosion was massive, visible from kilometers away. This tunnel system was storing significant munitions. Simple logistics. The river prevents easy resupply, and Russian drones dominate the airspace. Ukrainian soldiers in the defensive trenches need ammunition close at hand. But here's the concerning part: the size of this depot suggests supply chain difficulties. Normally, Ukraine has moved to smaller, distributed ammunition caches over the past 3 years to reduce vulnerability. A large depot this close to the front indicates potential logistical strain. Brief but significant update from Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. We have geolocated video from the western part of Ivanovka showing Ukrainian forces from the 505th Battalion conducting what appears to be a raid operation. Footage shows Ukrainian infantry advancing through wooded areas toward a suspected Russian position. They place explosive charges in a classic hit-and-run operation before withdrawing, likely back toward Havralivka. What this confirms: Ivanovka's western sector is under Russian control. Ukrainian forces are now conducting raids rather than holding defensive positions there. This is a significant territorial shift. Now to the most active front of recent months, Donetsk Oblast. Fresh geolocated footage shows Russian infantry raising their flag in Myrnohorad. Interestingly, one soldier's flag patch is pixelated in the video, possibly to obscure unit identification for operational security. Current assessment: it's nearly impossible to map exact control in Myrnohorad. Russian forces appear to be present throughout the city, but Ukrainian units continue isolated resistance in pockets. This battle is entering its final phase. We expect Russian consolidation within days. Here's where things get interesting. Reports indicate Ukrainian counterattacks in the southern and southeastern parts of Kostiantynivka, with some positions reclaimed and offensive operations launched toward nearby settlements. Russian forces, meanwhile, appear to be concentrating their efforts along the railway line in the southern part of the city. We're relying on military blogger reports here. Visual confirmation is still pending, but these are generally reliable sources. Small but significant territorial gains west of Kuzminivka. Russian forces have reportedly crossed the Bakhmutka River and captured initial Ukrainian defensive positions along the T-0513 route. Attacks continue southwest of Chasiv Yar along the elevated defensive positions. Russian forces are steadily approaching the center of Zalizny and have made gains in the eastern part of Zakitny. You'll notice gray zones on our maps. These represent areas where we have military blogger reports but lack visual confirmation. 2 years of doing these daily reports have taught us these gray zones aren't 100% accurate, but they're excellent indicators of directional momentum. Now we reach today's most critical development. The Russian-Ukrainian border region, particularly Kharkiv Oblast, has exploded with activity. Ukrainian source Deep State has published footage showing another Russian pipeline infiltration operation. We can count 10-15 Russian soldiers emerging from an underground tunnel system into Ukrainian-held territory. The fatal mistake: these troops were immediately spotted by Ukrainian reconnaissance drones and subsequently hunted. Why would Russia concentrate 10-15 soldiers in one location on an active front? This demonstrates exactly why modern doctrine limits groups to 2-3 infantry soldiers maximum. Larger concentrations become drone magnets with catastrophic results. Multiple geolocated videos from southern Kupyansk show Ukrainian infantry taking shelter in buildings from Russian FPV drones. Russian reconnaissance drones operate 24/7 over the city, and attacks follow Ukrainian movements constantly. We've geolocated similar attacks in central Kupyansk. Ukrainian DRG reconnaissance, sabotage groups entering buildings, followed by Russian drone strikes. Critical observation: Russia is attempting to defend Kupyansk the same way Ukraine defended Pokrovsk, and it's failing. Just as Ukrainian drone attacks couldn't hold Pokrovsk, Russian drones alone cannot hold Kupyansk. This proves a fundamental principle: you cannot defend a city with drones alone. The control reality: our front line in Kupyansk is approximate at best. The situation is chaotic. Imagine a checkerboard where Ukrainians might control certain buildings while Russians control others nearby. This patchy warfare hasn't been seen on this scale in months, especially with both sides employing DRG tactics simultaneously. West of Hlebok, Russian forces are reportedly advancing through forested areas toward Kharkiv. We cannot visually confirm this yet, but here's what we can confirm: massive Russian infantry concentration in the settlement of Zelina Zastava. Geolocated footage shows 15-20 Russian soldiers moving into the settlement, an unusually high concentration. The strategic question: why concentrate so many troops here? Zelina Zastava is likely already under Russian control with just a small holding force. These 15-20 soldiers aren't defenders, they're assault troops preparing for new offensive operations. Possible targets either toward Tik or toward Hurov Kozakok. The Russian-Ukrainian border has become a raging frontline. Yesterday's bombshell, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced capture of Vysok. Today's development reports now indicate Russian forces have also taken Kharkiv further south. At the time of recording, Russian attacks are already underway toward Ryazny. Results unknown. Civilian impact. The nearby larger settlement of Krasnopilya is being evacuated by Ukrainian authorities. This tells you everything about the threat assessment. Sumy Oblast northern pressure, but the border offensive doesn't stop there. Moving to northern Sumy Oblast, geolocated video confirms Russian forces have advanced again south of Oleksandrivka. This settlement was partially under Ukrainian control just months ago. Reliable military bloggers report the northern part of Andriivka is also back under Russian control. Let me explain what we're witnessing, because this isn't random chaos, this is calculated strategy that's been working for Russia over the past 12 months. Think of it this way, Russia concentrates massive forces on one axis, let's say Chasiv Yar. They launch intensive attacks for months. Ukraine responds by pulling reserves from quieter sectors like Kharkiv Oblast to reinforce Chasiv Yar. The moment Ukrainian reinforcements arrive at Chasiv Yar, Russia suddenly shifts focus, say, to Pokrovsk, attacking positions that are now underdefended because Ukraine hasn't had time to move reserves there. Then, once Ukraine rushes troops to Pokrovsk, Russia shifts again, perhaps back to Kupyansk, hitting newly weakened positions. It's a strategic shell game, and it's devastating because Ukraine cannot simultaneously reinforce everywhere. Russia is using operational mobility to create local superiority despite not having overwhelming force across the entire front. The Kursk parallel. Remember Ukraine's Kursk incursion? The theory was that it would force Russia to pull troops from Donbas to defend the border. It didn't work. Russia maintained Donbas pressure while defending Kursk. Now Russia is using the same principle, forcing Ukraine to disperse reserves by opening multiple fronts simultaneously. The troop concentration around Pokrovsk, Chasiv Yar, Kostiantynivka, Lyman, and Kupyansk has become too heavy, so Russia opens a new front along the entire border, forcing Ukraine to thin out these concentrated defenses. This is recognized military doctrine, and both sides understand it. The question is, who can sustain this operational tempo longer? So what does all this mean for the trajectory of this war? Russia has shifted from concentrated break through attempts to multi-front pressure campaigns. This suggests they're prioritizing Ukrainian exhaustion over territorial speed. The border offensive is strategic, not opportunistic. This is designed to pull Ukrainian reserves away from Donetsk Oblast, where Russia has invested heavily for months. Urban warfare doctrine is failing for both sides. Pokrovsk and Kupyansk prove that drones alone cannot hold cities. You need boots on the ground in prepared defensive positions. What's next? Watch for Ukrainian response patterns. If they pull significant reserves to the border, expect renewed Russian pressure in Donetsk. If they hold their Donetsk deployments, the border situation will deteriorate further. We're also likely to see increased emphasis on long-range strikes against supply infrastructure like the bridge attacks we discussed earlier. Quick announcement about this channel's future. We're in discussion about some exciting projects for 2025. I'm planning to shift focus slightly from daily front reports toward deeper analytical content. Moving toward more strategic analysis, geopolitical context, and longer-form investigations will allow us to provide more value while reducing that risk. These videos are more challenging to produce, but they're also more rewarding. You'll see growth in quality and depth. I'm genuinely excited about what's coming next year, and I hope you'll stay with us for this evolution. That's today's front report for December 22, 2025. As always, we condemn all forms of violence and always prefer diplomatic solutions to armed conflict. Our mission is to provide clear evidence-based analysis, not to glorify war. If this report was valuable to you, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the notification bell so you never miss an update, like and share to help others stay informed. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. I'd especially love to hear your assessment of these border attacks. Do you think this is Russia's main effort or a feint? Let me know below. Thank you for watching the Military Situation Room. Stay informed, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next report.